Spider-Man No Way Home was easily the best Spider-Man movie of all time, and it only makes sense to come back to the channel to make a review for this movie. Honestly, right after watching the movie, I feel like there should have been so much more promo for this because it should have been overhyped a lot more because it's that good. I do want to talk a lot about the spoilers for this movie because it's really hard to give my thoughts if I don't spoil the movie. So if you haven't watched Spider-Man No Way Home yet, you should probably click off this video and watch the movie first. So the leaks were true. We did get to see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield reprise their old roles as Spider-Man in this movie. I did expect them to come back, but I didn't expect them to have as big of a role as they got in No Way Home. I feel like Tom, Tobey, and Andrew all had great chemistry during the movie, and they played along each other really well. I feel like No Way Home really did Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man a lot more justice. You could debate whether or not you like him or not, but I feel like out of all the Spider-Man movie franchises, his movie franchise was the worst. Not because of him, but more so the movies itself. We really got to see how much Gwen Stacy meant to Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man when him and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man went to go console Tom. And I was also really glad to see that he got to redeem himself by saving MJ when she was falling off the Empire State Building. Just seeing the emotion on his face after saving MJ, you know that it meant a lot to him knowing that he couldn't do the same for Gwen back in the old movies. That was also one of my favorite parts of the movie because Andrew got his redemption and it was probably one of the loudest moments in the theater when I watched it. So aside from seeing Tobey and Andrew, I really liked seeing the old villains from the old Spider-Man movies. I really felt like they made some of the villains a lot more better than they were in their old movies, especially Electro and Green Goblin. Jamie Foxx was amazing as usual, but William Dafoe was actually so good as Green Goblin. Every time he says a word or gets a chance to speak, you get chills in your back. That first fight with Tom Holland's Spider-Man and Green Goblin, that really killed Tom Holland's mental state. Every time Tom Holland's Spider-Man would punch him, he would just have that goblin laugh, and I don't know, it kind of felt like a horror movie. This was all thanks to William Dafoe's performance. I did think that he had one of the best performances this movie, and I really think that he outdid himself from the very first Spider-Man. I was also really sad to see Aunt May die in this scene because I don't know, she meant so much to Peter, and you could tell when Aunt May died that it meant so much to him. She even ended with the iconic line of "With great power comes great responsibility." And I was really glad that we got that because we never had an Uncle Ben, at least in the Homecoming trilogy, and I'm glad she dropped that iconic line. I also had a feeling that she was gonna die when the goblin started taking over Norman's body in the apartment. I feel like that whole sequence was one of the darkest moments in the entire movie because Peter essentially lost his last family member, and he kind of knew that if he only listened to Doctor Strange at the start, none of this would have happened. The entire theater kind of got quiet during this moment, and that's when you knew like shit kind of got real. So to kind of summarize the characters, I really thought that all the characters were really good. All the acting was pretty phenomenal. I felt like No Way Home really made a lot of these characters better than they were in their old movies. Not that any of them were necessarily bad in their old movies, but I really thought like it made them a lot more interesting in No Way Home. I thought the theme of this movie was also really special because it's all about Peter Parker growing up. Peter kind of had to learn from his mistakes by not listening to Doctor Strange, and that kind of resulted in Aunt May's death and other repercussions that happen afterwards. You kind of just have to realize that like everything has consequences, and Peter really had to endure those consequences, especially at the end of the movie. At the end, he had to let Doctor Strange reverse the old spell by making sure that everyone would forget who Peter Parker was. He has to say goodbye to MJ and Ned, who were his two closest friends, and his girlfriend. And we also have to realize that he lost Aunt May earlier in the movie, and I don't know, I feel like it's really sad. But then again, the whole point of the Spider-Man character is, to help the greater good, and that means making some sacrifices. Peter also learns in this movie that when dealing with conflict, you shouldn't kill someone because of it, you have to cure them. During the final fight with Green Goblin, Peter was fucking pissed and he was throwing all these punches at Goblin and he easily could have killed him. I felt like that whole fight was basically him letting out all the emotion, all the stress, all the shit that he had to deal with From losing Aunt May to all the other stuff with Mysterio in the previous movie, losing Tony Stark, all that grief. And he was actually about to kill Goblin because his rage got the best of him, but thankfully Toby jumped in and stopped Tom from doing it. I was also pretty happy that Toby didn't say anything because he kind of knew just by staring at Tom that Tom knew what he was doing was not right, and ultimately he let go. After curing all the villains, Doctor Strange does redo the spell and it sends everyone back, including Andrew and Tobey Spider-Man. And after that, essentially no one knows who Peter Parker is. He lives by himself, he doesn't know anyone else. He even tried coming back to MJ after the spell like he promised, but ultimately he decided not to because he kind of realized that if MJ and Ned were continuing to be a part of his life, he'd essentially be putting them in danger. MJ and Ned also got into MIT, and Tom Holland Spider-Man kind of just thought, maybe that's best for them. And honestly, it was a pretty sad ending, but I don't know. I'm pretty happy, pretty satisfied with it because, it shows that Tom Holland Spider-Man has kind of grown up. I feel like the ending's a great way to end off the Homecoming trilogy, but it also sets up a lot of future stuff because, it kind of sets up Spider-Man's entire origin story, and now Marvel can move on to other projects related to Spider-Man in the future because they have a clean slate now essentially. Overall, I thought that this movie was really enjoyable. It's definitely my favorite Spider-Man movie. It's probably right now it's top 3 Marvel movie for me, but recency bias. The fight sequences are just so good. All the characters were so good as well. The acting, the story, everything basically. The only real issue I had with the movie was sometimes the jokes are a bit corny in the dialogue, but that's really just nitpicking. With that being said, I'm going to give Spider-Man No Way Home a 9.5 out of 10. With that being said, thank you for watching my Spider-Man No Way Home spoiler review. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. It means a lot. I don't know when I was going to come back to this channel, but I wanted to do a review for this because this movie is pretty big and it was definitely worth the wait. If you enjoyed this movie, make sure you comment and tell me your thoughts about it. And I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Peace.